embarked on by this administration. The Buhari administration is credited as one of the best performing in the area of infrastructure, from the completion and unveiling of the second Niger Bridge to massive road and housing development. Many say history will be kind to the Buhari administration in this regard. The man spearheading these projects, Minister of Works and Housing, Babatunde Fashola, says for these reasons, Nigerians will reward the APC with massive votes in the presidential election. And joining us now via Zoom is the Minister of Works and Housing, Babatunde Fashola San. Good morning. Thank you for joining us on TVC Breakfast.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Right. Let's begin with the president's speech broadcast yesterday with regards to the scarcity of the naira. There's been divergent reactions, especially with regards to the fact that the matter is still at the Supreme Court. I wonder what your impressions are as a learned silk with the president's decision to make a statement, because there are those who are criticizing him for making a statement, knowing that this matter is in court. And he went ahead to say that he respects the rule of law. And there are those who have also questioned that. From his speech, would you say that the president has actually respected the rule of law?
Well, let me say that in a democracy where there is a right to speak freely, there's bound to be divergence of views, as you have heard. And but I think that the principle about respecting and awaiting the outcome of a court decision sometimes has been stressed, if I may use that word. And there's also a lot of jurisprudence and scholarship about when where the boundaries of contempt lie in actions done and in things said. And this is, of course, not to be misunderstood that I am suggesting that, oh, you can do anything while a case is pending. I know better. But one of the examples I offered when we were having this conversation yesterday was that, look, listen, if I shot the door on your finger and you went to court to say that, look, the court should direct me to open the door. And I said, okay, let's wait for the outcome of the court decision. And you are in pain. And people are in pain. The question to ask is, if I attempt to open that door, would you, the person in pain, be saying I'm acting in contempt? Or would you gladly have me open the door and then we can go back to court and say, look, the matter, we have resolved it? There's another angle. Interventions the president sought to make were interventions in response to the very palpable pain. And I think he said that much in his speech about the unintended consequences of the policy. So that's as far as I am willing to comment about that and the court case.
The matter has gone to a situation where it is seen by many as a party fighting against itself. That the president is the head of the APC, a presidential candidate is running, and people are saying, look, this man is doing it because he wants to throw a wrench or to throw a cat among the pigeons of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed because there's consequence. There's consequence to suicide.
Well, you know, for me, I always try to see the positive side of things. So my first reaction to this conversation is that it enriches our democracy. It clearly shows that men of courage and men of character are standing up to be counted within their own government and within their own party to say, no, I don't agree with this. People have found, or people who have had voices, clearly have not lost their voices. Somebody like Ashwaju, because he's seeking the presidency, has not lost his voice. His well-known voice of being an agitator, an activist, somebody who fights on the side of the people when there seems to be no help. And this has been his typology and character. So he's saying, no, yes, this is my party, this is our policy, but it's causing pain. So let us look at it. And it is not convenient. He hasn't taken the convenient road to say, let me just keep quiet so that I don't appear to be upsetting people, or I don't appear to be upsetting my party. So, and that is the type of president Nigerians are now being offered a chance to elect from the same party with a different typology. Now, the other part of this, of course, is to then ask ourselves that in about 3 election cycles, we have had a major interface with our central banks and our central bank governor. I remember, I think it was in the run-on to the 2015 election that the central bank governor was removed. And we're having this now. And the question to ask ourselves is, hey, how political is our central bank getting? On the one hand, it was a central bank governor then saying, look, things are not going right. And the president goes in and removes him. On the other hand, now is the central bank governor making policies clearly supported by law, but stating that, look, I want to do this for this reason and for that reason. I don't see those reasons in the law. So the question to then ask is, has the law been used for a policy seeking to achieve an objective that is not within the law? Yes, it is possible that the law can say, go and do this and go and do that, but those subsequent consequences are matters of reflection and report after you have finished implementing the policy. They do not become the objective of the policy because those objectives are not set out in the law. And so, whilst we are always quick, and this is an invitation to Parliament, whilst we are always quick to quickly amend our electoral act, and I think this is the time to stand back and say, hey, as our politics left our central banking and related laws behind, can we look at them again in order to ensure protection for people? And this is the dynamism of law and lawmaking, and this is an invitation for the next assembly to have a look at it again and see how best we can ensure that these things no longer reoccur. Of course, for me, I have asked myself, and I find it difficult to accept that the law, the central bank law, allows what is happening to have happened. Because what has happened essentially has been a mop-up of currency. And it seems to me that the Central Bank Act does not intend or contemplate a mop-up of currency. It actually contemplates, in my view, a swap of notes. So when you declare, for example, that a particular denomination of currency is going to be taken out of circulation, the law, if you look at it, it uses the word replace at face value. So it means that every time I bring 100 naira, if you say that is the one you want to change, you must give me a new 100 naira back. You can't say I should bring all the money. Well, I didn't use those words. You can interpret them. I'm just saying that it's not supported, doesn't seem to be supported by the law. And clearly, to some extent, the policy as announced by the central bank was with the intent to change, I think, the 500, if I recall, the 200 and the 1,000. It said nothing at all about the 1,000 naira note. So I would have assumed that if there was some difficulty with implementing those policies as contemplated by the law, perhaps a middle ground would have been to double down on the supply of the 100 naira notes that were clearly not affected by the policy as I recall them to have been stated. And perhaps that would have been a mitigant. So instead of me having one 500 naira note, for example, I would be happy to have 5 100 naira. What it contemplates is not a mop-up of currency, but a replacement of face value as I bring them in. And perhaps that is why some commentators on this matter have said, oh, this thing is different from the way they do it in Europe, or this thing is different from the way they do it in America. And I suspect that if you make comparisons of the Banking Act in England and the equivalent in the US, you might find similarity with our Section 23, and perhaps in interpreting our Section 23, the CBN may have overreached itself and gone beyond what the law intended. Because don't forget, I think that it was either Central Bank Governor Lamido Sanusi or Soludo. We changed notes not quite some 15 or so years ago, and it didn't cause this much pain. So something has gone wrong somewhere, and I think that this will be a very, very steep learning curve for Nigeria. But my biggest fear is the consequence on the banking institution as a whole in Nigeria post this exercise. That's my biggest fear. And the earlier all of us involved sat down to look at the more unintended consequence, I fear that we do not have a run on the banks post the policy.
Earlier, you asked a question that I would like to throw back at you for you to answer. I'm going to ask 2 questions in one. The first question you asked was that how political is the central bank getting that aspect? Then the other question is, are you concerned that this might have far-reaching implications for the chances of the party, the APC?
Well, to the first question, the point I was making was that a single occurrence is an isolated event, but when it becomes twice, that in the run-on to an election, we're having central banks or central bank governors being in the eye of the storm, perhaps it is time to understand that our politics is probably getting to areas that it was not intended to get to, and all of us must step back as public servants and leaders to say, hey, what do we need to do in order to ensure that this is mitigated or really doesn't happen again? Those were my thoughts. It is, excuse me, it is in the realm of politics and elections that certain policies will have much more impact on how voters perceive or do not perceive candidates and parties. And in some elections, no matter how powerful the party may be, candidates may choose, voters may choose to go with the candidates, not the parties. We have seen a former president who didn't run on his party's damaged brand. And if you go back to 2011, you will see that brand was so damaged, the presidential candidate carefully avoided it. And I'm not saying that that is what our candidate will do now. We, like every government, we have had successes, and there are places where clearly there is room for improvement. And so you take the benefit with the burden. And that is what I think Ashwaju has done in this campaign, owning the positives and promising to improve on those areas where there is distance to cover. So, and I expect that voters will hear that message. And, you know, when you look at the opposition itself, do they want to go back to those very horrible days? And I was at an event where we were talking about security, and I said, look, the very first place to start to discuss security and to think which choice you want to make is to remember that the Attorney General of any country, any society, is his chief law officer, and he has answered the question, what security can they then be offering you? in any event, you find that in 2014, when the Chibok girls were kidnapped, the position of the main opposition was to say it didn't happen, that it was a lie. It was the Buhari administration, the APC government, that has helped to recover at least almost 200, 100 and something. I don't have the data off my head. We haven't solved all of that problem, but we recovered them, and that is a stark choice between a party that said it didn't happen and the party that said, no, it happened, and starts to bring them home. It is a stark choice between us that in 2010, from 2010 to 2014, right, no public event, May Day rally, Independence Day parade, and all of those things, none held at Eagle Square. They were holding in the courtyard of the villa out of fear. So if the person who was supposed to look after us was afraid to come out, and all of that has been reversed, President Buhari has been, the APC has been out at May Day, Armed Forces Remembrance Day. Those are stark differences between us. The problems we met on security, high-level terrorism, have been confronted, they have been decimated, degraded, if not totally resolved. But new ones have emerged. And again, so with that attitude, you make your choice. Somebody who denies the problem or somebody who is actively engaged in solving infrastructure. I keep reminding people, we didn't campaign on infrastructure, we campaigned on the economy. And tell me what economy anybody can run without infrastructure. Broken ports, broken roads, broken bridges, no rail, no broadband of any reliability at the time. So we can't have this conversation I'm having with you without infrastructure. So this party, this government has spent its time and its limited resources building the backbone on which an economy can properly be built. Airports, seaports, supporting the conclusion of local production of refined products by investing in the Dangote refinery, building the Ajaokuta, Kaduna, Kano pipeline, expanding the road network, completed, but they didn't fund in spite of the high petrodollars at the time. So the next step, of course, now is to begin to mine and milk the economic benefit. In terms of the anti-corruption campaign, let me just give one example because it is very easy to say, oh, they are prosecuting people, it's political persecution, is this, is that. Let me give one very clear example. And
Leonard Silk, before you go ahead with that example, if you can hear me, Leonard Silk, we need to quickly go on a commercial break. When we return, we'll continue this conversation.
We don't like to eat better, more nutritious meals, more veggies, but we want it tasty and easy too. Knorr Cubes, that's the secret. Made with real ingredients like chicken, parsley, and garlic. And enriched with iron, so your meals are better for you and more delicious too. That's the cocoa. Let's give it some accolades. Change your world by changing what's on your plate.
Hey, Charles.
It's so hot, Auntie. You'll get used to it.
Yes!
What's the big deal? It's just a cereal. Just a cereal? You are talking about something that has helped thousands of Niger farmers provide for their families for decades. This cereal, we have enjoyed it for so long. It's part of our history.
Is that you?
And it's packed with the energy and nutrition that I know my family needs every day. That's why Golden Morn is so special to us. You get it?
Keep enjoying Nigeria's favorite breakfast cereal fortified with Grain Smart, a special combination of iron and vitamins to help.
Never.
Thank you for staying with us. Before we went on the break, we were speaking with the Minister of Works and Housing, Babatunde Fashola San. He was talking to us about the gains that the current administration, APC administration, had made over the years, the past 7+ years. Before we went on the break, Leonard Silk, you were talking about the anti-corruption war by this current administration and the gains it has made.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
And the example I was going to give you was that in administrations before this administration, there have been reports of seizures of monies taken out of Nigeria, money belonging to the Nigerian people, taken outside these shores, seized by foreign governments. This president has recovered some of those monies, brought them back to Nigeria, put them in projects in my ministry, at least I can tell you. Those are part of the monies now being used to fund the construction of the second Niger Bridge that you spoke about in your intro, the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, and the Abuja-Kano Expressway. It is not enough, but it is a very definitive statement of a reversal of corrupt actions to bring people's money back and make it work for them. And that is a defining difference. Beyond and in addition to the convictions, the arrests, and the seizures. Just last week or 2 weeks ago, the law in the aftermath of prosecutions and forfeitures, and the president approved, I believe, 114 billion naira to be added to that fund. It's called the Presidential Infrastructure Development Fund. That is a clear policy and principle departure from what you had before. Some people, main opposition, or their members used to take these monies out. You will recall there was a report of monies found unaccounted for, forgotten on a plane. And later, there was a trumped-up explanation that they were going to use it to buy arms. One individual was going to buy arms for a government, when arms are government-to-government trade. But that is a reversal of policy and mindset. So these are positives for the APC, for the Buhari administration, an example of what should happen. So I think about a few weeks ago, we also announced to you that 1.96 trillion naira was being invested in a road tax policy by the NNPC Limited. Now, this is a marked departure because I remember, I think it was MPDC in their time. It was a tale of scandals, how they were diverting monies from public till to fund elections. And those are clear marked departures in terms of how to set the example of what a government and a president ought not to do, or a party, for that matter, with public resources. And I'm not suggesting by any means that we have reached the end of our stated objectives or goals, but I just tell you, clear marked difference in the choices that people will make. And so there we are.
We have seen that in this issue of the sufferings over the currency thing and so on, the voices of the PDP presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar and that of the Labour Party candidate Peter Obi have been completely quiet. Do you see this as cynical? Only Ashwaji has spoken on the fuel and the Naira crunch issues.
Well, the message it sends to me is that it must show clearly to the Nigerian people where the voices of those who want to lead them will be, where those who seek their votes stand in difficult times. And Ashwaju's position in difficult times has never been in doubt. He has usually been either the first. If he is not the first voice, he's probably the loudest voice. If he is not the loudest voice, he is the most enduring voice on the side of the Nigerian people in difficult times. In many instances, he's all the three: the first, the loudest, and the most enduring. And none of his opponents have that character trait. So when people are talking about character, that is it. When you are looking for leadership of courage, that is it. Where does he stand in difficult times? He stands in difficult places, never afraid to to do that. Never has been.
Right. Then how do you respond to those who say that Asiwaju was part of those who brought in this government that has plunged a majority of Nigerians into the situation that they find themselves now?
Well, I mean, again, it takes me back to the history of this party and this government. You see, one of the things that the formation of this party achieved was something that has never happened in the history of Nigeria, a merger of political parties. It never happened. And when he started pursuing this idea, not a few were saying it won't happen, that you can't close a merger. Nobody has done a merger before in Nigeria. They always have alliances for the purposes of elections only. And when it happens, after that, they break away. And history is full of those alliances. But this is the man who is the doer. Once he sets his mind on something, he gets it done. He got the merger done. And he got it done because clearly he was opposed to the ideas, the policies that was embedding the main opposition party in government. So that is a good reason to say, I am going to support a different party. That's a good reason. I don't agree with your ideas. Of course, as you then know, and as I've acknowledged, some things have been done. I've spoken to some of them. And nation building is not an event, it's a journey. So infrastructure, trying to build the bedrock of the economy that was struggling, has happened in half the time that the main opposition had. So we did all of the ports, the roads, bridges, everything in half the time that they had, significantly with less resources than they had. So we are in a better state compared to them to say, give us a chance to continue and consolidate this. Because sometimes before pleasure comes, there is some pain and inconvenience. And I know that at the end of the day, when this economy starts to fire on all its cylinders, because the fundamentals are now in place, you will have a better experience.
Right. We need to go on another commercial break. When we return, we'll continue the conversation with you. Please stay with us.
Hey, Charles.
It's so hot, auntie. You'll get used to it.
Yes!
What's the big deal? It's just a cereal. Just a cereal? You're talking about something that has helped thousands of Niger farmers provide for their families for decades. This cereal, we have enjoyed it for so long. It's part of our history.
Is that you?
And it's packed with the energy and nutrition that I know my family needs every day. That's why Golden Morn is so special to us. You get it?
Keep enjoying Nigeria's favorite breakfast cereal fortified with Grain Smart, a special combination of iron and vitamins to help your family make every day golden.
I get it now.
Nestle. Good food, good life.
When I was younger, I got asked a question by a friend. What is the ultimate dream in life? Gates on earth, story.
Thank you for staying with us. Before we went on the break, we were speaking with the Minister of Works and Housing, Babatunde Raji Fashola San, and he was talking to us about the gains the APC government has made over the years and how the APC presidential candidate might be building on that to reposition the country. Now, you have spoken to the gains, the developments that President Buhari administration has brought. And though there are some persons who have criticized some of the things that Buhari have brought on board beyond infrastructure, they are wondering what your presidential candidate will be doing differently to reposition Nigeria as it stands. Because he has often said that he is going to build on the legacies of President Muhammadu Buhari's administration.
Go through the constitution, the manifesto of the candidate for the campaign. You will see clearly a commitment to double on GDP And this is in acknowledgement of the gains that have been made in consistent quarterly growth and an understanding that that growth needs to double in order to begin to impact people on a much more significant basis. So that's taking it from where we will be living it and running with it to improve upon it. And that is the way enterprises are managed. You acknowledge what has been done and you add value to it. In the way that I have acknowledged, for example, that some programs were started by the main opposition, but they didn't finish them for reasons of lack of focus, and we took them and ran with them. So you will see that again, and people must understand that that is how governments work and that is how they should work. In the area of security, for example, he has acknowledged what has been done and he has promised to improve on it, but more importantly, he has said there's a portion that he talks about winning the hearts of people in his security plan. And that is a very, very important difference between his manifesto and that of the others. It speaks to a clear understanding of how insurgency is controlled and tackled historically and more recently. You will have a counter-terrorism plan, which is working terror. You don't win it without a counter-insurgency. And this is the winning hearts part of that manifesto. 3 or 4 weeks ago, I was speaking to the APC professional forum, and I was invited to speak about the manifesto as it related to electricity. And I was telling people that one thing that this administration has done, ununderstood or unseen or unappreciated, is that this administration wrote a policy that created micro and mini grids. So to those who keep saying, oh, there must be an alternative grid, there is an alternative grid. This country now has the ability to generate power off the main grid. And we have used successfully in markets like Sura, Sabongari, and the market in Aba, Ari market. We've used it to power 11 universities. We've used it for certain projects. What Nigeria needs now is to double down on that. And his manifesto clearly has a plan for it so that people are not tied to the grid. And there are other areas that, so this is what is coming in his manifesto. And as I was saying earlier, this is somebody that has stood with the people, that is not afraid to take a principled and different position. I remember late President Yar'Adua used to tell me that, look, you know, when I was squeezed by the federal government, I ran out of court. People don't know or don't remember that when he was governor of Lagos and challenged the federal government on the local government case, it was not only Lagos that went to court. I believe Ebonyi went with us. I know Katsina went. I believe Niger went. And I think Nasarawa was with us. But when the federal government knuckled down, seized the revenues they couldn't pay, they all ran out of court. So President Yar'Adua used to joke, God bless his memory. Look, BRF, when they squeezed me, I couldn't pay, so I ran out of court. But Shaju doesn't run. He fought to the end with the pain. I was there. So that's the kind of principled leadership in difficult times that Nigerians will be electing with their votes. And people who know him know that he hasn't stood with them only when it is convenient, when every 4-year election, like his main opponent. He has stood with them when he wasn't running for office. He has criticized his own party, criticized his own government, even before now, but has maintained his clear support for the Buhari administration. It is not being disagreeable. It is just expressing an independence of opinion and a clarity of that. And that's the kind of quality you want in a leader.
Well, when Asiwaju turned 60, you wrote an essay, Asiwaju as a logistician.
Logistician.
Logistician, yes. And It came to my mind again when Soludo went to the federal government to complain that 40% of Anambra was now taken over by Gully and so on and so forth. And it made me think about the similar situation in Lagos with the Babbage, where there was a problem with the Babbage and maybe what we know as Island today. The idea of how that acumen was used to build what we now know as Eko Atlantic and save Ikoyi and Victoria Island from being submerged.
In fact, I remember then that what used to happen was that almost every year, the federal government used to pump sand, and the sea would just come and take it away. And the provisions in the budget of the federal government then annually was about 4 billion naira. And that was by the main opposition. And Ashaju used to tell us then that this is money that they were using for elections. That the sand, how do you audit the sand? That let's look for a permanent solution. But every time we wrote to Obasanjo, then as the president, to hand over the beach, there would be a problem. And I was his chief of staff, so I was involved in drafting those letters. I would say, no, let's do it this way again. We will send another letter. Until one day, a letter came from the President Obasanjo and said, I hand over, go and do it. And that is how we started the story. Before then, the Victoria Island used to flood up to NTA, up to the Nigerian Law School. For those who remember, that has not happened in quite some time, except for one unusual flood, I think happened a year after I went out of office. I don't remember. But what essentially is protected that shoreline. And this is the method of the man, is sure-footedness and resoluteness, really is the word. Now, as logistician, I remember when I joined government in 2002, it was the run-up to 2003 election. And there was a major problem with voters' registration. And he said, no, INEC will not disenfranchise Lagos voters. And that was where the logistician side of him came to me. And he said, no, Chief of Staff, you can't go home. People can't vote. It's our job to ensure that they vote. If INEC is not doing it, we will do it for them. I said, you are a lawyer. Go and get all the magistrates. Write to the chief judge. Call the attorney general. And we started preparing affidavits. We got photographers to start taking people's photographs, swearing on oath that they were disenfranchised, they couldn't vote. We compiled everything. Let's go to the federal government. And in the event, INEC had to say, okay, calm down. Give us all the numbers. That's how people got to vote in 2002, 2003. I remember during the 2006 census, when enumeration of households was going to start, I said, look, let us support these people. It's for our own benefit so that we have the right numbers. And it was myself then, as Chief of Staff, the current Deputy Governor now of Lagos, as Commissioner for Science and Tech, who provided the backbone. I think the chairman of the National Population Commission then was Alhaji Jiade. And we gave support, we did enumeration, we did everything. They told us they had 4.5 million households. So they had given us that figure. Now, what is the population? They now said Lagos was 9 million. I said, no, that doesn't make sense to me. If you have 4.5 million households, a household is a family. It means that there are only two people in Lagos said we are going to come. We initiated the challenge. I sustained it. And by the time we finished, when I finished as governor, out of 20 local governments, I think the Census Tribunal invalidated the results of that census in 11 local governments. And so from get-go, he had told us, don't rely on that 9 million to plan for Lagos. You will always fall short. And we used those household figures, extrapolated to a minimum of 4 people per household, and set the base of a population to work for at 16 million. So when people say Lagos works, it's the mindset and the approach to it. So if we had accepted those 9 million figures, we'll be planning water for 9 million people, refuse management with 9 million in mind, revenue generations with 9 million in mind, schools and roads and transport facilities with 9 million, we will continuously come short. So this is the kind of mindset, and this is my experience. Nobody told me this. I was inside. I saw this. So, and this is, for me, the choice that lies before people now. And I think that is what we need. With a Governor Shettima now as his running mate, somebody who has seen terror up close, who confronted it, stood up against it, stayed in his state, and that was important, to fight terror. I think you have quite some combination out there in terms of experience and very, very proven character and courage.
Yes, you've seen your candidates crisscross the country, and we've seen the level of massive support that he has garnered with the crowd, the number of crowds. What say you to the level of support he has been garnering, and what kind of numbers are you expecting on the day of elections?
Well, we are expecting very positive voter turnout in spite of the challenges. People are excited about these elections, and we hope that the excitement stays till election days. I've seen some funny polls that do not clearly accord with what our voting experience is. I have had the privilege of being involved in Nigeria's elections at gubernatorial and presidential levels now since 2002. So this is 21 years. I've been polling since 2002. I am happy to see a lot more of our elites now getting involved in polling, but I dare say that they haven't made enough investments, so they will continue to get skewed numbers. They will be using inadequate samples, and they will be using clearly unsustainable methodologies. Our polls now show that our candidate is in the lead, and that was as at the end of January, and our poll was not done by phone. It was done in person, 5,000 sample, which is about the size of sample that is used for the American elections, in-person interviews, and we're still continuing. We'll get more results. Let me tell you this today, we're also polling online. And as at yesterday, we had done almost 10,000 online interviews with likely voters who have PVCs, and they still indicate that we are ahead in spite of the challenges. So people have made up their mind. So when people are publishing polls now, 7 days to the election, 10 days to the election, and they are still showing that over 30% are undecided, I don't know what their methodology is. Our margin of error in the face-to-face sample poll that we did is 1%, plus or minus 1%. That is the margin of error. That was as at the end of January, and it put us clearly ahead. So this is where we are. We expect to win. We've worked hard for this. We've prepared for this. We've trained people. We've trained agents, and all of this is public. It has always been the basis of our success, and I'm sure that it will lead us to success again.
Yes, there's this question I really wanted to answer. Some people have been in this election season trying to minimize the work Ashiwaju, you, Ambode, and Sanwo-Olu have done over the past few years, saying that Lagos, nothing has happened in Lagos. Some people, I have old school mates who say they have been in Lagos for 20, 30, 40 years, and they still argue as though Lagos is not changed, and so on. What's your attitude to this form of illusion?
Well, I have a few reactions to them, for them. You know, every job looks easy when you are not the one doing it. So the work you and Veronica are doing this morning looks easy when it is not me doing it. So I can criticize it, what has changed in this methodology, for example. And also when you are inside an envelope of change, you are sometimes the last to notice it. It is people who come in. And just recently, one of my friends came in from Europe and said, look, the rate at which Lagos is changing, and he was telling me that he remembered a place in 20 years ago where they were just about, he could barely find a place to have a decent dinner. And that now, number of restaurants, bars, outlets, and these are businesses that have opened up. There was a time when I think that it was during my time as governor, we were scrambling for hotels. And we were sitting on the coastline. We couldn't release our tourist energy. That has changed. You now have a city-state, the first perhaps in history, to build a rail line on his own balance sheet. Because I hear people say, no, that train project started in 2010. Why is it taking so long to finish? I recall that the intracity rail line in Washington, D.C. started during the time of President Obama. As of June or September 2022, when I visited D.C., they haven't finished with the support of the federal government. And what Lagos is doing has no federal government component. So people don't understand how difficult these things can be at sometimes. And sometimes they're enveloped by the change and is not so manifest to them.
All right.
I remember what Outer Marina, Inner Marina. So time is something that numbs bad memories.
All right.
And so if they don't see change, I'm sure that others do.
All right. And that's a fine place
in any event,
to leave the conversation.
In any event, where is the place that the other candidates all run to?
I wonder.
We have to leave the conversation.
I made that point too.
For want of
and
time.
It's not the best place to live
Yes.
or do business.
All right. Minister of Works and Housing, Babatunde Raji Fashola San, thank you for your time on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Let's tell you now that the views and reactions of all our persons and have no connection with TVC News. Thank you so much for being a part of the show. Up next is Your View with Mariah and the ladies. And afterwards is This Morning with Yori Folarin. Do stay safe and bye for now.
Live streaming of your favorite programs delivered directly to you. Watch anytime from anywhere on your mobile or smart devices. Download the TVC News app today. Available on Google Play and Apple Store.
Politics is defined as getting what, where, when, and how. But in the mix, many things come to play to shape the political fortune of any country.
Honorable Minister, that's how you misinform the public.
From the political actors to the electorate, campaign to voting, from debates to policy decisions, big events happen to engage us in constant conversation.
That's what we're looking for. Not some people who are talking about ethnicity. No.
Who is on your mind?
Don't worry.
Join me every day on Politics Tonight, where we dissect issues that shape our political destiny. Politics Tonight, weekdays on TVC News.
This Sunday.
The freedom of movement is a fundamental human right. But when the right is taken away, what happens? This is the story of survivors trafficked from Nigeria to Libya and other parts of the world. Senior correspondent Sharon Ejason exposes the routes and tricks used by traffickers to lure young girls and boys into perpetual slavery.
She told me that you do prostitution. I said prostitution. Even though I can't do prostitution in my country, is it a country I don't even know anything about? I thought I can't do that.
In this touching story, survivors of irregular migration share the gripping tales of how their dream of a bright future transformed into a dark world of fantasy.
Nigerian Embassy told me to go back to where I'm coming from.
It is an organized crime where perpetrators escape prosecution. The society keeps mute and the social media fool it to become a big business. Watch this investigative piece exposing the realities of human trafficking. That's on Sunday Specials, where great stories live.
So, all in favor say aye. Those against me, the ayes have it.